either slightly different from what they are, or we talk, we see things are.
My little cryptid, and this isn't scripted. I wanna equip you and use against my enemies, yeah. You see, I wanted to save you, and then learn how to raise you. But I forget you from the wilderness.
Happy Halloween. Strange Familiars is brought to you by 90 Days to the Perfect Puppy. You can find them at sithappens.us. It is the day before Halloween. How are you, Allison? Are you feeling appropriately spooky?
Just cold.
So on this very special Halloween edition of Strange Familiars, we have kind of a jam with the Monster Fuzz guys. We read some old newspaper articles.
From your respective homelands.
In the Strange Familiars way. I found an Irish Wildman story from the 1800s. They read a story about an Irish witch, and I read a story about witchcraft in our area, right here in the Susquehanna Valley, Pennsylvania. Between the two, I'd say ours is a little bit creepier.
Is it a contest now?
No,
it just legitimately is creepy.
Yeah, the witches come and they're licking blood off of a skinned horse hide. It's very, very creepy.
People get hungry.
By the time this goes live on Halloween morning, the Witch Cloud project will have gone live for everyone on Bandcamp. Patrons got the notice on Friday. We're recording this on Saturday. I think there's 3 copies of the record edition left. So the first edition was the book, record, patch, sticker, trading card, and there was only 50 records. So probably, I'm guessing by the time this goes live, records will probably be gone, but maybe not.
There's one left.
maybe you can run and get one yet. However, the edition number 2 is all of that stuff, less the record and the trading card. So you still get the book, the patch, and the sticker, and the download of, like I said, if I did my math right, it's over 3 hours of audio associated with it. You can find that at stonebreath.bandcamp.com. The second package is listed under a CD, even though there's no CD with it. That's the only way Bandcamp would let me list it as a pre-order, so you would get the download when you bought the book. Bandcamp is very kind of focused on bands. They're not up to date on podcasts and audiobooks and the other things that I plan on using Bandcamp for. So just a note to everybody, if you order that second package, it actually doesn't come with a CD. It's the book, the patch, the sticker, and the download.
So you get the audio, it's just not in CD.
Yeah, you get all the audio, but I didn't want somebody to order that thinking they were getting a CD. It's just listed as a CD. It's not an actual CD. So I put a note on Bandcamp to that effect as well. Hopefully there's no confusion there. But again, that's the only way to do it. So you can purchase the book now and get the download when we release it. So this is a shared podcast with Monster Fuzz. It'll be published on our feed and theirs. Just a note to Strange Familiars listeners. I know we usually try to keep things PG-13 on Strange Familiars. The language the Monster Fuzz boys use is a little more adult than what we normally use in Strange Familiars, and that's fine. It's a special edition. It's Halloween, but just in case anybody was listening with their kids, I wanted to give you a heads up before we got going. Make sure to give Monster Fuzz a follow. You can find them at monsterfuzzpodcast.com. You can follow them on all the podcatchers wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's go ahead and get to our Monstranger Fuzzmilliars talk here.
I suppose, who wants to take the little first few words? Who wants to do that?
Welcome to Monstranger Fuzzmilliars.
Yeah, that could be it. Monstranger Familiars. Yeah, that could be it. This is like, yeah, Fuzzmilliars. Yeah.
Fuzzmilliars.
So this is kind of the Halloween club then, right?
Yeah.
So for our listeners and your listeners, I suppose we should explain that we're going to do a few spooky stories to get people in the mood for Halloween, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I found a story from Ireland.
Oh.
Lovely.
And I'm going to let you read because I'm not pronouncing these names.
To be fair, like the pronunciations in Ireland are even difficult for us. Like we get our balls busted all the time for there's some Irish words that we might get wrong at times, and people are like screaming at their phones or whatever they're listening on when we pronounce them. So it's not just you, it's us too.
So just complete curiosity, growing up, like coming up through school, how much is Irish Gaelic part of your education, if at all?
Like, 100%. Like we do it every day.
Oh, really?
And every day. And we're just, I don't know if it's the way it's taught or what, but like it just doesn't stick with us, right, Emma?
Yeah, I think it's partially that the way it's taught. The other part is that it doesn't really help you at all in terms of your career. Unless you want to be a primary school teacher, it's not really applicable. So for a lot of us, we just sit there for an hour and don't take it in. And then you do that for like, geez, Rob, what is it? Like it's effectively
14 years. Yeah, 14 years.
14 years, yeah.
Yeah, and like almost daily. And yeah, we can't speak it fluently now. My girlfriend is fluent. She's
primary school teacher.
Yeah.
See,
and fluent. So there you go. So it's the teachers usually are pretty good at it, you know. But it's Halloween, lads. Are you feeling spooky?
Always
Spooky thing.
Yeah.
It's my job. I have to stay in spooky mode at all times.
We're the same. Yeah, we get a lot of these stories and stuff coming in now, and definitely it's 2 feet are going into the spooky camp now. We had a great story about a guy who he was staying in this house, and he was in the bedroom at the top of the house, and it was quite enclosed in, and he used to sleep there, and he had he'd lie up and look at the ceiling, and he'd hear the scratching in the ceiling and stuff like that. And he noticed like the fixture, the fitting was gone, and there was a bit of wire sticking out and stuff like that from where it would have been at the top of the ceiling. And he later found out that the creepy thing about it was he later found out that someone had actually hung themselves up in that bedroom. And he thinks because it was such a small enclosed bedroom that from where they hung themselves would have been where they were scratching at the walls. So it made this totally dark, spooky story, you know? So we're getting all this stuff sent to us now. We were like, we never heard anything like this before.
Was that the one you were? I haven't listened to. All of the most recent mini fuzz. Okay, yeah, it
was in today's. It's a great story, and yeah, it was really, really spooky.
Yeah, I got to the beginning of it, and my wife came home, and we had some business stuff we had to talk about, and so I put it on pause, and I didn't get back to it before we started recording. It's good.
Definitely give it a listen. It's a good one. But got a question for you guys. We're gonna ask now, and this is one Tim. I'm curious there both of you actually, because I don't think I know. First ever Halloween costume that you can remember. What did you dress up in?
So this is a bit of a synchronicity because I saw the clips from your recent video pod.
Yeah.
Spider-Man. It was Spider-Man.
Was it Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But
so 3 Spider-Men in the room.
In the 70s and 80s, I don't know. Yeah. They had these costumes that came in a box.
Right.
And I really disliked him as a kid because I wanted to look like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So what these would be like a plastic suit you put over your clothes and a plastic Spider-Man mask. But on the suit, instead of having like Spider-Man's uniform, it was a picture of Spider-Man on the suit.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So as a kid, it was like, no, I want to look like Spider-Man. I don't want to like Spider-Man doesn't have a picture of himself on his chest. But those were the costumes back in the day. Did you have that stuff there? Like where you go in the drugstore and buy a costume in a box?
Well, Mr. Fancy Pants there with a Spider-Man costume. Well, mine and Eamon's probably the same, but I'll give you mine first. It's I was dressed in a black bin liner, like a trash bag, and they would get coal dust and rub it under your eyes and on your cheeks to make you look like a zombie. So God knows what kind of skin problems I have now from having coal dust rubbed on my face. But that was common enough. Like, Emma, what about you?
Yeah, exactly the same. The oldest one I remember is my sister wanted to be She-Ra, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll be He-Man. And and basically we both wore bin bags. and my sister just wore Wellingtons with her bin bags. that was, it's like, she's sheer, she got the boots on, that's fine, go get some sweets, kids.
Yeah, she was fancy then with the boots. I mean,
very fancy. That's my sister's always been fancy, you know.
Another one is, have you ever gone all out with Halloween and really put in effort?
1 year, so let me explain, first of all, the Spider-Man. I was number 6 of 6 kids.
Right.
By the time I came along, my parents didn't have energy to like do some kind of homemade costume or anything. It was like, you get a costume in a box, kid.
Yeah.
But, in my college years, I was friends with these super creative people whose parents didn't really give a damn what they did to the house.
Oh, nice. That's always a plus, yeah.
So they would make their own haunted house every year. And, I mean, they would go all out. There would be just the whole yard would be turned into this thing, and they kind of make a path for the trick-or-treaters to come through, and they'd build coffins and stuff to put people in and pop out and scare the kids. And it was with them, they 1 year they made me into this sort of killer in a burlap bag mask kind of thing, but it was really like all out, like, fake blood and everything. It was quite the event.
Nice. Emma, what did you do?
I think the Spider-Man one is probably one of the more
adventurous
ones I did. Yeah. It's definitely adventurous to wear a skin tight suit and go around Dublin City. So I've done that. The only other one I did was probably similar to your burlap bag, Tim. I did the Scarecrow from like Batman Begins. So I got like a burlap bag and I cut it out so it was like a real rustic kind of a bag sort of a thing for a mask, and then I just wore a suit with it so I kind of looked like the Scarecrow. But I know that both of ours pale in comparison to what Rob is going to say was his best Halloween outing, because I know what your best Halloween outing was, and it looked majestic.
Yeah, it was. Well, I kind of regret it as soon as I did it. So like, I'm a big Star Wars nerd, and seeing Darth Maul, I used to love him, even though the prequel trilogy is kind of, whatever. I enjoyed him, but most people weren't mad on him. But I found, Darth Maul, I was like, I love that guy. He's like the coolest looking dude. I'm going to try and do that whole costume. I think it took me, no joke, and a friend of mine is big into Halloween too, and he dressed up as the clown from American Horror Story, I think, and Twisty, I think it was. And so the two of us both basically did full makeup, bald caps, the works, like and it was my first time ever putting on a bald cap and doing the face paint and stuff, but I think it literally took us 3 to 4 hours to get ready. And then we went out to the nightclub and stuff, but it was cool because like people were taking pictures with us and stuff, so it was a cool buzz, so you got a kind of a kick out of it that I didn't even expect to come.
You had that picture up on Instagram or somewhere,
I
right?
did. I did.
Okay, so that was a good job.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, no, it was one of those ones where I probably never will do it again, so I'm like, I'm sharing that every year. Every year it comes around, I'm like, I'm going to share that thing.
I'm gonna nerd out a bit here. Where they treated, I thought, Darth Maul very well in the Clone Wars cartoon series.
I haven't watched him yet, and I've heard great things about him, but it's just one of those things I never sat down and give him a try. But I'm familiar with what happens to him and stuff, and he gets the robotic legs and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but the way those, I think it's because they're episodic. Some of those stories are just, you can toss them out, but some of the ones they did in the Clone Wars, I think, kind of work better than some of the movies, honestly. There's some really good stories amongst, you kind of filter through, and some are good and some are not, but they have some really good storylines in there.
It's the same as the games, like Knights of the Old Republic is a fantastic Star Wars game, and it was because they just sort of steered the series away from the usual type of stuff,
Well, that's it. I guess when you don't have a studio that's kind of pumping money in and expecting results back, you have a lot more leeway. Like I was even playing Force Awakens, and you go to, I believe the planet is called Dathomir or Darthamir or something like that, but it's got all the Darth Maul lads are there. Which I think that's
their name, Darth Maul lads.
Darth Maul lads, I believe. Yeah, the race is just, there's the Darth Maul lads hanging out over there.
Nice. So we've got the costume. Now here's one. This is we'll show the generational gap here, perhaps. How old were you when you first seen your first horror movie, and can you remember what it was?
I have no clue. It had to be something. So they would play horror movies on Saturday on TV, and it had to be something like that. And I'm thinking, like, I love like the Christopher Lee Hammer vampire movies.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it was maybe one of those, and like I was a scared kid, so I would just scare the bejesus out of myself watching this stuff. But I would constantly watch it. So I'm thinking it was probably something like that, or could have been something even more cheesy, that just whatever came on TV. But I definitely have early memories of those Christopher Lee Dracula movies.
We kind of, I'm not sure whether, as the technology improves, I don't know whether they became better at scaring kids, or was the result the same? Like, did you get the same buzz out of watching, say, a Christopher Lee Hammer horror? As I think my first horror film was like Alien, and I was way too young to see it. I was like totally terrified. It was in my nightmares for years after I seen it. But I had this strange fascination to go and watch that stuff over and over again as a kid. I wonder what that is. There's definitely something psychological to it, where you see something that you're not supposed to see, and it does scare you, but you're trying to like G yourself up to go back and watch it again or see something like it again. Terminator was another one that kind of scared me a little bit. Terminator 1 and 2.
Yeah, I remember one of the Friday the 13th movies was I watched it way too young. I was way too young to watch it.
Yeah.
And my parents got a VCR pretty early, so we would rent these movies, and there was no supervision as to what we rented whatsoever. No. It was just, they did not care what we rented. So that was one I watched probably way too young, and I remember that one bugged me a good bit. Just it was more like things that I thought, like, there could be a dude under your bed, with a machete,
Totally. Yeah, no, I remember I think the first one that resonates with me, I definitely saw horror movies before this, but the first one that traumatized me was, we went to like a sleepover when I was 11 or 12, and we watched the original It movie with Tim Curry as the clown.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah. It was like, and it was only the first part. I don't think I can't remember if that it was like, because it was VHS, so if it had a two VHS set, because that movie's like 3 hours long all in. But I used to have bunk beds, man, and I used to sleep on the top bunk bed, and I would just imagine the clown's face just slowly rising up. Oh, you know what I mean? And it was with me, like it was in my mind. But that certainly, that movie stuck with me. But what stuck me before movies even, I don't know if either of you guys remember Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah,
TV
classic.
Show. Mm-hmm. I remember that used to be on Network 2. It was like 5:30 on a Tuesday. And I would literally just hang around with my mum afterwards for the rest of the night, like doing dishes and stuff. And she was like, he's so nice on a Tuesday. He's so like docile. And I was so scared after watching it every Tuesday,
Yeah, Goosebumps was even a bit creepy at times. And that was very for like kids, Great books as well.
Yeah.
Shouts out R.L. Stein.
Absolutely. And then like, because R.L. Stein, like he got that really clever stuff where he started like, you choose your own scare. You are the arbiter of your own horror from now on,
Yeah, those choose your own books, or the adventure books, they're a pretty cool thing, actually. You kind of forget about them.
Yeah, I always thought there'd be some way to like update them in the internet age and make something.
Did you
really
see that
cool.
Black Mirror? That episode of Black Mirror that was choose your own adventure, kind of.
I've not watched any Black Mirror. I know I keep.
Tim,
I know. I have to watch it. It's one of those things that's like on the list, but.
It's so good. Even if the beauty of Black Mirror is you can just jump in and watch one or two. Like you don't have to binge it. Every story is a standalone experience.
It's like if the Twilight Zone was directed by David Lynch. Like it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've watched a couple and just been like, I really shouldn't have watched that in my current emotional state. Like they're very bleak, very, very bleak.
It's kind of, there's elements of sci-fi horror to it, I suppose, as well. Yeah, it's got that kind of buzz and really good social commentary and stuff. Yeah. But it's a good watch. So next question, folks.
Well, wait, before we get off horror movies.
Right.
You got a favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it'll change between a lot of them, but the Alien series is one of the first ones I was exposed to, and I really do love it. But I do love some of do you know what I really like, actually? The Dawn of the Dead remake. I thought that was, you see, myself and Eamon were of an age where the Romero zombie flicks, while they were great, they were a bit corny because we were sort of like a bit older. And then so when the remake came out, it was kind of what we were looking for. It had the Romero script more or less. I know they changed it in places and things. That kind of the idea was the same, and it was modern, so it had modern gore, modern. Now there was a few silly parts in it and stuff, but I enjoyed that one. I thought that was a really good flick. Yeah.
Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead is brilliant. For me, I love the movie series Halloween. Michael Myers is like the villain of my life. If I have one thing that scares me more, he's literally, if I'm stressed out about something, I will have a dream about Michael Myers just chasing me. Like, I swear to God, it's sometimes the dream isn't even my perspective. It's like a camera. It's like a movie, and I'm just there being like, oh shit, I better hide in the closet. For me, I love even when it starts to get really dumb, even when it goes into like Halloween 6 and there's a druidic curse on him and he has this tattoo and they try to like do laboratory experiments on him and stuff. Like, there's something about Halloween, and that's like a choose your own adventure, because there's 4 different timelines of movies that you can be like, all right, I'm like 1 and then I'm 2 and then I'm this one, or I'm the first one. Like the most recent one is the first movie, and then you have the last 2 sequels. Then there's the middle one where you have the first 6 movi's and then nothing else after that. But I love the character of Michael Myers. I think he's, I don't know, it's terrifying, and because there's so much mystique about it. I love that they've never really explained it, except in the Rob Zombie ones, which maybe lessen the fright a little bit because of that.
So my favorite is, it's kind of stretching the definition of horror a little bit, but this is actually my favorite movie of all time. Night of the Hunter.
I don't think I've seen it.
Go run and see this movie. It's made in 1955. It's a black and white movie.
Oh, okay.
This director was a movie critic. He made one movie, Night of the Hunter. And basically, these other directors were saying, Charles Lawton, I think is his name. These other directors were saying, because he was writing these critiques of movies, and they said, if you think you know so much, why don't you make a movie yourself then? And he did, and it's damn near perfect. It is an absolute masterpiece of very weird, very creepy. It's Robert Mitchum plays this kind of preacher gone bad that shows up at these people's houses. It's a long story. I won't give it all away, but he's very, very creepy and basically haunts these 2 children throughout the movie and stalks them, and they end up it takes place during the Depression in America here, and they end up at this woman's house who's just taking in all these kind of lost children and stuff, and he comes along, and this old woman has to deal with them. It's Lillian Gish, a silent movie actress, but she's much older at this point. And it's just fabulous. It's just such a stunning movie, and my absolute favorite of all time.
Still holds up today, yeah?
Oh yeah. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
A lot of those movies from the 50s really do hold up today. Like old Twilight Zones, I love, and maybe it's because of the way they shot things, because of the lack of resource that we're used to now. But I totally agree. Some of those 50s movies are just perfect. The way they're put together, the way they're composed.
Do you know what frightened me, actually? It just popped into my head when we were talking about it. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That really spooked me. I think it was a remake that maybe came out in the 80s. Yeah. I seen that when I was way too young as well. I think we rented it for like one of my friend's 9th birthdays or something. And I think there's a nude scene in that, and like his mom came in and like, what's going on here, eh? But yeah, it was that film really terrified me. I think it's films where you'd think where no one is safe and they can all transform and you don't know who to trust. Like The Thing is a great film for that as well.
Fantastic.
It really gets into the sort of the psychological aspect of it, because you just don't know who to trust, and I think that makes for a good film in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me, one of the ones that stands out in my head is we rented The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, when we were kids. And no one knew we had read. It was like 18, so to get it from the video store, I was the tallest one. Clearly not 18, but the guy didn't care, But we rented The Exorcist 2. We watched it. We kind of made fun of it because, like, it's not a bad movie, but it's just so much character driven. We were looking for the schlocky, more Friday the 13th kind of stuff, you know, because we were kind of that age. But I remember we had to keep it for the night before we bring it back to the video store. And I went back to my parents' house or whatever, and I put the video under my bed because I knew I'd get in trouble if I had like watched The Exorcist 2. And all night I was just thinking that like some demon would come out of the video, like I had transgressed in some way and things were coming for me. But yeah, I remember that vividly, and a sleepless night.
Nice. Yeah, that is pretty spooky.
When I was a little kid, I lived on a farm in rural Maryland, and there was one library that was about 5-6 miles away, and we would always go to this little library. It's just a tiny little library. It's pretty much the size of like the kitchen in my house now. It's just this little tiny library, and they didn't have much in there, but they had this series of books called Man, Myth, and Magic, and I would get them out, and I blame these books for making me into the weirdo I am today. I was like 5-6 years old, and my mom, you know, she's very Catholic, but no rules as to what you're allowed to read. Like reading was okay, like anything you could read, pretty much. There was some things when I got into some adult comics a little bit later that she was a little worried about heavy metal. I don't know if you or Metal Hermit. Yeah. You know, some of those were a little, but they didn't ban them. They didn't tell me I couldn't have them, but they weren't too pleased with it. But as far as books, they didn't. You know, it was kind of like whatever, read. You know, go ahead and read. So I would get these out, and it was an encyclopedia of just weird stuff. So it's like, you know, everything from, you know, apparitions through zombies and everything in between, and all these like weird religions, a lot of on witchcraft and stuff. And you know, I'm a little kid, and I stayed up late all night. I don't know why. I've always been a night person. I would stay up late in my room drawing, and I would look through these books for inspiration. You know, I'd like draw these, you know, monsters and demons and stuff. And there was a article in there on demons, and it had these old etchings of demons, and I think one of them might have been Beelzebub or something. Is like half fly, like this half demon thing. Yeah. And it's a summer night. I've got my window open, and, you know, I'm reading this book, and I hear something in my room, and it's just this huge moth. But somehow I've convinced myself, you know, as a kid, I'm looking at this picture, this, you know, this fly demon thing, that this moth is somehow, you know, some sort of demon in my room, and I've got to get it. Now, I will say, as an adult, I love moths, and I do not hurt moths, and I spent many times collecting them, and it's one of my dreams to actually discover a new species of moth, because I would get to name it.
Oh, nice.
But so I'm very fond of moths now, but I could not abide this moth. It scared me so much as a kid. I smashed it. You know, I'm so worried being a demon. So, but I was so scared by that book, just so creeped out by it.
Yeah, moths kind of spook me, man. I don't know what it is about them. I wouldn't kill them or anything, but they do spook me. I don't like them flying around the room or anything like that. I don't know what it is.
They can get super big as well, which is like where it gets scary. You don't see too many big ones over here, but when you do see a big moth, because and that's a way with moths as well. Like, they're kind of cute as well. Yeah. Some moths look really cute, and then some of them are like, this is a giant hairy fly thing, and I
hell creature, Beelzebub
it's
spawn.
In my blood to be nervous. Yeah.
There are vampire moths.
Right.
Not anywhere where we live, but I think in some tropical places there are vampire moths.
No, that is legitimately terrifying to me.
That's enough, yeah.
Which is a great segue, by the way, before we jump off this topic, to just let everyone check to know how good Midnight Mass is, because we've been talking about it. Like,
I feel like we're sponsored by Midnight Mass.
Yeah, we should be. We should be. We talked about it quite a lot on one of our episodes, and we were talking with Tim about it beforehand. But isn't it just such a great show?
Oh, I just,
it really is
fantastic. It's so good. I've tried to get my son is very particular about what he watches, and he has very good taste. Okay. I tried to get him to watch it. It's like, I'm telling him it's character driven. You will like this. It's good. I found it excellent. I liked Haunting of Hill House. I didn't see the other ones that director did, but But this I liked even more than Haunting a Hill House.
I agree with you. Like I I watched Haunting a Hill House. I absolutely loved it, man. It had me in tears one or two times because it was so character focused and there was so much tenderness. It wasn't like, it was obviously a haunted kind of spooky show, but so much tenderness in so many of the characters and so much stuff about family and regret and trauma. And you know, that was so good. But I have to agree with you about Midnight Mass. There's a certain tone to it, and maybe it's because it sort of leans in a little bit to the, I don't know, I don't want to say anything because it might ruin it for people, but I totally agree. I preferred it more, but I thought Haunting of Hill House was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was excellent. But and you know the so there's the big bad guy, and then there's the you know, guy who may or may not be a bad guy. There's so many layers to the characters because you know, I don't think the priest was always making, you know, selfish decisions. I think you know, the way I read it, he was kind of at times doing what he thought was best, and then things just went sideways.
Yeah.
Like it was all informed, agree, and that's the great thing about that show, and I think that's where it really excels. Is sometimes what can really make or break a piece of like scary media, I suppose, is when characters behave like without any common sense. That happened in the second Prometheus film. Like, it's a team of like researchers and scientists and all this stuff, and they basically behave the exact opposite as a team of those people would do. Like, they land on an alien planet and they all walk out without any helmets on or anything and just start walking around. And like, you know, obviously, you know, scientists and people that go to space even now are so concerned about contaminating the environment that they land on, even with the rovers and things, that they clean them down, and they're very careful about how they sterilize everything. And these guys just walk out of a spaceship without any helmets on, sort of, you know, they're kicking grass and like, you know, pulling down trees and stuff, and it just doesn't make sense. But Midnight Mass, almost every character, what they do makes sense. There's nothing that raises an eyebrow and you go, hang on, this is the exact opposite of what I was expecting from this person, you know?
Yeah, I would say. I would also say, and maybe this is a little bit divisive, did you watch the movie The Mist with like Tom Jane? And so I love that movie, but I know there's some people who are like, fuck that movie. But I like that there's some real, what would you say, like cookie cutter characters to an extent, but I did love the feeling of that movie, the claustrophobia, you know. But again, that is the only reason it's coming to mind is because the two religious zealots reminded me of each other, albeit the one in Midnight Mass is you know, it's not as extravagant, let's say, but the two of those reminded me a little bit of each other. But Midnight Mass, to your point, it's just it's almost perfect, I would
Chef's
say.
Kiss.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, it does get a chef's kiss.
Worth the investment of time, for sure.
It is. So even if our listeners there are looking for something to watch today on Halloween, even if you start it, it'll definitely get you in the mood. It's definitely worth the watch. So we've done movies, guys. Favorite scary book? This was something that I had to kind of go back and think about because it's been a while since I read a spooky book. Tim, have you got any that jumps out to mind?
Well, you know, I read a lot of Clive Barker and Stephen King and stuff when I was younger. You know, if you were going to say like choose something straight horror, I'd probably just choose like a Poe collection or something.
Okay.
But overall, I'm going to choose The Mothman Prophecies, which is
by John Keel.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
True, but to me, that's very frightening. Like that book is, if you really try to inhabit like the character of you know, John Keel in that book, it's not a character. I mean, it's a true story, but say you know, you try to put yourself in his place and in place of the people that were experiencing those things at the time. It's you know, it's quite disturbing, especially if you believe, as I do, that these things were actually happening.
Yeah, that is spooky. Emma, what about yourself?
The one that I enjoyed the most was a collection of short stories by Joe Hill, like Stephen King's kid, I think. But the book is called 21st Century Ghosts. It's a scary book. There's parts of it that are scary. There's a short story in it called Black Telephone, which I believe they're just making a movie out of now, and it's meant to be fantastic. You know, it was one of the standout stories of the book as well. But the story that I like the most in that book, it's more of a bittersweet romantic story. It's the title story. It's called 21st Century Ghosts. And I'm just going to say now, spoilers, I'm going to give the whole story away. So if you want to read this, skip ahead a couple of minutes. But basically the idea of it is there's this old cinema that an old man sort of owns and works in, and the whole thing is about this person seeing a ghost in the cinema. And it goes into a lot of his backstory about his brother going to war and being killed. And it's quite dense for a short story. But at the end of it, it talks about the old man and that he's basically had a relationship with this ghost, spectrophilia, perhaps, but a relationship with this ghost. And he really manages to describe the feelings of love really well. And they talk about this old man sitting in the cinema watching his final movie and this apparition of a young woman giving him a kiss. And then that's like the kind of final thing that happens to him. And there's so much build up to it. And there's so much nice character focused stuff. And it's written so beautifully. It's a really special story. Like even outside of a horror short story, it's a really fantastic short story in and of itself.
Yeah, I like them. I'm going to go old school and say like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I read that when I was about 13, I think. And I really enjoyed it. And that kind of stuck with me. And you know what else? And it was about this age as well. I think that's kind of when I stopped reading spooky stuff. Was the books, and they are kind of like trashy Pulp Fiction-y type of stuff, but the Resident Evil books.
Yeah,
I read them when I was like young, and I think I was the right age, 12 to 13.
What was it? Escape from Caliban Cove.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. But they actually did give me the willies when I was reading them as a kid. So I think they achieved what I wanted from them. They gave me the spooks. But other than that, I don't think I read many spooky things later. I read some of the Arthur Conan Doyle stuff when I was around that age as well. Was The Lair of the White Worm, was that him? But yeah, those were good. I enjoyed all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I skipped over Lovecraft. I very much Lovecraft. Racism aside,
Lovecraft. Was he a raging racist? Was he?
Yeah, didn't like the Jews, I believe. Is that it? Yeah.
Didn't like much of anybody. If you weren't New England Protestant, I think you were a subhuman in his mind. But
I agree. I totally agree. I find it because I was reading Lovecraft. It's kind of hard, the amount of adjectives and adverbs and everything that he uses, but the mythology that he created with Cthulhu and Riela and Nagara and all these things you can barely say, man, that stuff is so cool. Like I love that. I played a game called The Sinking City, which is kind of steeped in Lovecraft mythology, but the way that that cosmic terror. I love that, but I must admit I find it difficult to read sometimes, which is probably just because I'm a dense individual myself, so it is what it is.
I'm trying to think as well.
And the original Frankenstein, as you brought up Dracula, the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it's so not modern, right? So it's if you're expecting like a modern horror tale, you're not going to get it, but the story itself is very creepy. Like, the guy just builds this monster that just haunts him for the rest of his life. I mean, that is like really, really creepy. And when you consider, when it was written, what was happening socially at the time and so forth, it's very, very interesting. But it is, it's as a modern read, it's a little weird. I think there's,
there is elements of that as well. I remember reading, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and feeling like a lot of pathos for the monster himself. He was so lost, but to your point, there's a lot of nice, I think that's great because we think of horror and we always kind of think of like, oh, here's the big bad and he's coming and he's going to take everything. And I do love it when they kind of humanize and they have a compassionate view towards the monster,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like the old King Kong vibes and stuff. What was the other? You were mentioning the New England Protestant buzz. Do you remember that in the sort of the story of the New Jersey Devil, how like Ben Franklin sort of had beef, or the Jersey Devil rather, with the family that were involved with that whole story? It was pretty funny. I can't really recall it properly.
I'm trying to remember.
It was the almanac that they had like rival almanacs or
Yeah.
something, didn't they? And Ben Franklin was like making fun of this guy all the time in his almanac.
I
Yeah.
stumbled across a podcast that was a genealogy podcast,
Right.
and my wife's family does genealogy, and so I was just kind of flipping through the episodes just to see what they did, but I didn't listen to it. But they had a whole episode where they got into the Leeds family genealogy, which is
Nice.
Mother Leeds was supposed to be the mother of the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, Japheth and all that was another fella, wasn't he, from that story? Japheth Leeds, I think, was the name of the guy.
Yeah. So I have to go back and find that podcast and listen, because that would be interesting to see someone who actually did the genealogy on the phone.
Yeah. Send it
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
because that was a big part of that story, like the genealogy.
I remember us talking about that though on the episode, and it was like Def Jam between two 19th century politicians or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. Yeah, it was great.
It was entertaining. It was good. Here's a fun little question for you lads. You're in a horror movie. Are you the final girl, the first to die, the comic relief, the skeptic, the smart one, or the killer? Well, I'll let Eamon take that one first. Eamon, what do you reckon? Are you the final girl, the first to die, the comic relief, skeptic, smart one, or killer?
I have a feeling I'd probably be a combination of the final girl, the first to die, the comic relief, and the skeptic. I'm definitely not the smart one or the killer.
You might be the smart. You're definitely. If it was me and you're the smart one. So you might be him, depending.
No,
on the company.
I think you might be the smart one in that. You're like, we need to leave, and I'm like, no, we need to understand the killer so we can rehabilitate him.
Well, that's true as well. Yeah, I suppose there's levels to it, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to think that when the things are spooky, I'll try to make a little wry joke to keep the spirits up.
Right.
So I might go with comic relief, which in essence means I'm the one that smokes weed and gets killed sort of midway through the second act.
Yeah,
I guess where I go. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even. Tim, what are you thinking?
It's really hard because so before that thing happened with the raccoon and my son,
Yeah.
I couldn't have told you what I would do in a situation like that.
Right.
The one good thing that came out of that situation is, like, so I've been in fights and stuff as a kid, whatever, but in like a real situation where it's like you had to step up and you had to put I had to put myself between the raccoon and my son. I had to take care of that situation. Before that happened, I never knew for sure. I mean, you hope you will do the right thing, right? I hope I'm gonna be the hero and stuff. But I guess I just never really knew. And when the chips were down, I stood up. I was like, I got to face this thing down. There's no one else. It's me or my son, and it's not going to be my son. So I'm going to do this. So that's kind of changed my perspective. It's like, I still get spooked when we go out and do this stuff. But I also have like a sort of confidence, like, okay, I'll just handle it, whatever comes up, which allows me to do these things. So what does that make me? Not the skeptic, because I believe everything. My wife will tell you.
Yeah, when you messaged me about Davy the Snail, you were like, "Where is this Davy the Snail guy? I got to interview all these people in Wexford."
I was fully ready to go full Strange Familiars on that. I'm like, these people are around. They still are there. Some of these witnesses are alive. I can find these people.
Yeah, so for context as well, for Tim's listeners, there's a character sort of on our podcast called Davy the Snail, and he's actually based on a real person, but we turned him into a cryptid, where I wrote an episode in the style of the usual cryptid episodes we do, and we basically acted our way through the episode and pretended like all this actually happened, and it was kind of a homage to our hometown because we used a lot of like our friends who are regular listeners. We used their names, so these are all real people from Wexford. And it came out really good, actually, and people enjoyed it. But it was, when you messaged me about it, it was so funny. You were like, I gotta find out. I was thinking, like, I gotta find out about this guy.
Is this really I mean, there's people around and I'm thinking, like, is this like literally they saw someone a snail, or did this just like some kind of slimy gray alien thing? Like, what are they talking about?
So, nice. It was funny.
I gotta get the description from the witnesses. Yeah, I was all in. So yeah, I am not the skeptic for sure. First to die, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't
think you're a big dude, Tim. You'd be all right. You're definitely not. I'd say you're going to. You might be. you're going to be up there, I'd say. Anyway, you're either the smart one or the fine one. I'll give you that compliment.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't give my wife and son enjoy it. I don't know. I'd say I'm probably going to be the comic relief. I'm probably going to get my ass killed fairly quickly, like, but I'll make a joke about it on the way, you know.
I think you'd have a good bit of fight in you.
You're
a fighty kind of a man when you need to be.
Yeah, to be fair, like I've been in, like I was on the roof of Loftus Hall before, and that didn't really spook me. I've been in a few spooky places, and I didn't really get the willies, you know. So yeah, I do all right in that situation. So maybe, but I feel like if I was in like the Alien film universe or something, I would just just kill me. You know, I wouldn't even want to survive. Just like, which is another nice segue.
Well, aren't you alive though? When they put the eggs in you, don't they just like put you in the
that's right, yeah. And you're up in all that kind of weird sort of stuff they put on the walls.
So in a way, you do survive till the end. That kind of happened.
Yeah, until it bursts through your chest, you're alive pretty much.
Didn't that happen in Resurrection? There was a really annoying guy in it, and he, I think, got taken fairly early on. But Sigourney Weaver's character actually found him towards the end. He was in like the Queen's Nest or something like that, I think. Oh,
that was one where the alien human hybrid it like bit him on the head.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That was, man, that alien human thing. I didn't like that.
Do you know they edited out? Here's a bit of trivia about that film for you. That actually, to make it even more creepy, had male and female genitalia that were massive on its like stomach area.
Right.
And it, like, I've seen the unedited versions of it, and it's bizarre looking. I think they just edited it out because it was like too distracting. They were this thing is crazy enough looking, like we don't need to add more stuff on top of it. But it was terrifying.
I must say, in terms of spooky movies, sort of, because I thought you meant there that maybe it was there, but you don't really notice it, but you notice something's off.
Yeah.
But I watched that documentary on The Shining, and they were showing the amount of stuff that Kubrick was doing to unsettle you subconsciously.
Oh yeah.
So they did stuff where like Danny walks past the fridge and the magnets are in a certain way or whatever. And then when he walks back in the shot, they've been changed. So subconsciously you're like, something's not right here, but you don't pick it up, you don't figure it out. And there was so much stuff, like the room that Jack goes into for the interview, there's a window there, but based on the structure of the hotel and the way it looks before you see it, it couldn't have a window because it's in the center of the hotel. So again, subconsciously your brain is like, something's not right here, and it just leads that feeling of kind of like the uncanny, or like, what's going on, you know? It's a fantastic.
They did a lot of that with Haunting a Hill House too, didn't they? Like,
yeah, I was about to say the ghosts in the background. You can't really make out, but some part of your brain is probably like, wait a second, what was that? Yeah.
It messes with your senses. But it's another one here which is kind of related to it, and it's our last question before we get on to the spooky stories. If you got trapped in a scary movie, which one would you go for? Like, what universe would you want to be trapped in? I mean, I suppose you're going to be looking for something that's not too creepy and like sort of manageable, especially if you're trapped in it. My initial thing, the first thing that popped into my head was Halloween, because it's kind of...
Really?
Well, things don't get crazy until a certain point, right? So, I mean, at least your daytime.
as long as you can like have a brisk walk once a year, you can probably just outrun them. Just like, oh, it's Halloween night, I gotta walk at a moderate temp, and just keep walking. I get that. Here's my answer though, would just be Candyman, and I just don't say it 5 times in front of the mirror. That's fine.
That's a pretty good one, actually. Tim, have you got anything jumping to mind?
Definitely not a zombie movie for me.
No, hell no, Sam.
Probably nothing like Aliens. I don't want to be food for anything. If I was younger, in my younger days where I was less of a married man, say, I would have chosen The Wicker Man, because I kind of liked what was going on in the background.
All the pagan sex people going around the place.
But as things go, there was a movie in the 80s called The Company of Wolves. Very...
Oh, yeah, I know that one. I know that was Irish director, I think, did that.
Really cool movie. and it kind of bounced back and forth through time, and you know, generally a werewolf movie, but with a twist. But it was very kind of decadent and you know, elegant and gothy and stuff. And so I let me have that. I'll go there.
Yeah,
Alright, cool.
Midsummer would be one that wouldn't be very good, actually.
Yeah.
And that's kind of got the pagan vibes about it as well. But yeah, that one takes a turn fairly quickly as well.
Yeah.
It is
that was
not,
a slow burn, but a good slow burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a roller coaster, very intense film.
Yeah.
It got crazy. It's a film we always reference all the time for that bizarre sex scene, but it was a complete, because like I hadn't watched a lot of good horror films in recent years. I'd sort of been just watching TV and not really following cinema at the time. And I jumped back in with Hereditary and then Midsummer, and they're very good flicks. Very good flicks.
Those art house sort of spooky movies like The Witch as well. They seem to be gaining a lot of ground now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
which is really cool. Yeah,
A Field in England. That's one of my absolute.
Haven't
favorites.
seen it.
Oh, that's the black and white one.
Yeah.
With the, yes. That is bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, more of a psychological thing than a straight horror movie, but very, very disturbing and very, very interesting. Like just the way it's done, it's really cool.
For sure. That's the one. And actually, do you know, I don't want to say anything because I feel like I'll give away things. I was going to say, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything.
Keep it strong. Yeah. So are we on to the stories then?
Let me go back to Halloween, just out of curiosity. Right. So, and this is just pure curiosity. You know, me growing up here, you guys growing up there. What was Halloween like when you were kids? So here, you know, basically, I'd get home from school. Again, I lived in a very rural area. I'd throw on my costume at about 5 p.m. or, maybe my mom would make me eat dinner. And dinner was always at 6 p.m. at our house. Always 6 p.m. So maybe she'd make me eat dinner first. But right away, I'd run out and I'd start trick-or-treating. Now, rural area, there's, acres between houses. I would walk miles and miles and knock on I would go back so I was alone, once I was the youngest of 6, and once my brothers and sisters were no longer interested in trick-or-treating, I still was. No kids my age in the neighborhood. So I would go alone on Halloween and walk back these dark
Spooky
drives,
alleys,
go to these farmhouses that were a half mile back into the woods and knock on their door. And these people, now as an adult, I can't believe I did that, because it's here comes a knock on your door in the 9 o'clock at night on Halloween, and it's just some little kid with a bag. A lot of these people didn't even have candy. They're like, let me find something for you, and they run off and they give me $1 or something, or throw a quarter in my bag. But I would just go and go and go, until I was done. But a couple times I went with my friends to their neighborhoods. They lived in kind of neighborhoods, and that was always incredible, because you come home with a trash bag full of candy. They just had big events. But so that was it. There was spooky stuff, and we tried to do spooky stuff, but it was very much like that Halloween night when you were a kid. You go out and get the candy. So what was it like for you guys?
For me, anyway, I would say that Halloween here. Funnily enough, Halloween when my granddad was a kid was called Cabbage Stump Night. and he was literally telling me this story. I was laughing my ass off. My granddad was born in, I think, 1935. And in Wexford Town here, he would have been in, I suppose every area wasn't really affluent at the time, But they'd basically just chop the head off a cabbage and throw it at people's doors and run off. so that was their Halloween at that time, which is interesting, because
that's what we called fun.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's like one of those Abe Simpson stories.
Yeah.
But because you go right, as further we went back, you would think it's closer to the sort of the pagan influence, the Samhain. You think it's more like that, but I think in modern times, we've discovered all that again, and we're going through a sort of an experience of trying to renew interest in Halloween and Samhain and all that. But for me, growing up, it was very much the Americanized Halloween, I would say. Trick-or-treating, lots of sweets, lots of candy, and door-to-door stuff. We had pretty bad costumes and things like that, but it was, same thing. We'd have bin liners full of sweets by the time we got home. And Eamon, what was it like for you?
It would have been similar enough to yours.
Yeah.
The only thing is you had like you had people who gave, you had the fun bags of sweets or whatever. They give you a couple of pieces of candy or whatever. But there was the other people that gave you monkey nuts and pennies.
They were the boring ones.
And I was like, I don't remember this, but my neighbor told me about it years later. So we went right to my next door neighbor, and I was like a tiny little kid. My mom was going around with me. We were doing the trick or treating, and so they gave me whatever. I think they gave me an apple and some monkey nuts. And I walked back to my mom, and they were still looking at me as I went away. And apparently, I looked up, and my mom was like, "Mom, they didn't give me any chocolate." I was super upset about it. So yeah, I think for me it was very, very, very similar to yourself. You just go around and you have a bag of sweets, and you're nearly vomiting by the end of the night because of how much you're eating.
We did the Bob for apples and all that stuff as well. I remember doing that where you're nearly drowning trying to get an apple that might have a bit of money in it or something like that, which is absolutely gross when you think about it. Like, so disgusting. Like a manky coin in the
COVID times, it's the worst of the worst. Yeah.
There was always the house that gave out pennies. There was always the house that gave out toothbrushes. That was
toothbrushes,
always,
really.
Toothbrushes. We didn't have that.
Toothbrushes or little things of toothpaste. It's like, okay, we get it. You're
that's a busybody. That's a busybody type
there
of
was,
thing to do.
There was one house, and I became the person who lived there. I became friends with him in high school. Yeah, but he went to a private Catholic school, so I didn't know him when I was trick or treat age. But they would go away every year, and their house was about 3/4 of a mile to a mile away from the farmhouse where I live. Mm-hmm. They would go away every Halloween, and they would leave a bowl on their front porch with a sign that says "Take one." But they would have the full size candy bars, chocolate bars, like not the little ones, full size ones. So it was literally a race for like. To get there before anybody else, and the first person who got there took the whole bowl and dumped it in their bag, of course. But
that's brilliant. I saw a funny meme earlier today. It was like death comes to get an old woman at her door, and she opens the door, but it's Halloween night, and so she thinks it's just a kid dressed up, and she holds out like a bag of sweets. And he's like, "Margaret, I have come to take your life." And he goes, "Holy shit, full-size Snickers. Never mind, Margaret, we're good."
I don't think I got the full-size ones.
No, we didn't get those over here, I'm afraid.
Oh, no.
They were rare, but you remembered those houses. And those houses never got their windows soaped or anything.
Yeah, I remember a bit of delinquency as well, for sure, as maybe a 12 to 14-year-old, maybe 15-year-old. I think there was a bit of delinquency, setting off fireworks and maybe a bit of vegging was going on. I can't really remember, but I do remember being up to no good. You see, where I used to trick or treat, there was a pauper's graveyard right beside it, and so it was really spooky if you went through this pauper's graveyard. It's still there to this day. It's actually not far from my house at all. Loads of unmarked dead in there, and I thought, as a kid growing up, I was like, oh yeah, there's, probably like 10, 15 people looking at the size of the place. Because it's not very big. I'll send you some pictures sometime when I'm going through. But there was hundreds, I think, there.
Yeah.
Not piled in.
We did a story early on in the podcast. There's a potter's field here in York. And Barnum came through with the circus. And one of the cannibals died while they were in York. He was a little person, and the so-called cannibals, quote-unquote cannibals.
Yeah.
They were not cannibals. The newspaper story at the time in the 1800s said that the other cannibals ate him when he died.
Oh, no.
Well, this is not true. However, he was buried in this pauper's graveyard, Potter's Field, we call him. And they dug him up to move him. I guess they moved the Potter's Field. I think 10 or 15 years after he was initially buried, they opened the coffin and there was nothing inside.
Oh, wow.
There is an associated story that we heard of a local doctor who supposedly had the bones of a little person hanging in his office.
That's spooky.
Yeah, so back in the 1800s, it was very common for grave robbers to take bodies and take them to medical people. So we are wondering if through some chain of events that this doctor ended up with the bones of they called him the Little General. He was one of Barnum's so-called Fiji cannibals. But really, really interesting story, and we eventually we're going to try to get a marker there for him.
That'd be nice. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good thing. Yeah, that's the whole Burke and Hare, wasn't it? They were Irishmen who moved to England, and medical students needed cadavers to work on. Mm-hmm. So they used to they I think they got put to death eventually. I could be wrong about that, but for a long time they were just exhuming bodies, bringing them into the medical students in England, and that was how they were making their money.
Oh yeah. There's another local story here that I'm going to cover on the podcast eventually, but it's a fellow who died. I'm not going to get into how, but his father sat on his grave with a gun because there was a rumor that he was buried with a gold watch, and he was so afraid that they were going to dig him up to try to get his gold watch. He actually spent several nights literally just camped out on his son's grave with a shotgun.
Jeez.
Yeah, there was talks of that. I was only listening to it on the radio the other day. There was some woman saying that she had I think she had a miscarriage, but she was told by the nuns at the time, because at the time in Ireland, nuns were basically the nurses in hospitals, and oftentimes there was hospitals where it was just nuns working, and they told her at the time that we'll put the fetus at the foot of someone else's coffin when they die. So there was a lot of this type of stuff going on where people were actually putting, say, children that were had out of wedlock, things like that, into the bottom of other people's coffins as they were getting buried.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Ooh.
Spooky, right?
Yeah.
Poor kids.
I have a spooky nun story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I was, my parents would, again, youngest of 6, very, very young. They would drop me off at Mass, and then the Sunday school building was behind the church, this little rural church I went to, and I would walk to the Sunday school. Now, the quickest way between the church and the Sunday school was through the graveyard.
Right.
So I would just walk through the graveyard. One day, this nun saw me walk through the graveyard, and I got to the Sunday school, and she pulled me aside, and she said, "Don't do that." And she said, "If you walk through the graveyard, you're gonna fall down in the grave, and you're gonna be with the skeletons."
Oh,
jeez.
Now, little did she know that I was a creep. So this was in no way I was like, skeletons, cool. I knew enough not to say that out loud. I didn't want to get the ruler across the knuckles, but in my head I'm thinking, I don't mind that. Skeletons are awesome, So it was no deterrent whatsoever. But that
did you find any spooky skeletons?
No, I never fell in.
It didn't turn into Jason and the Argonauts when you walked through there.
No.
But a bunch of guys got up.
I think I was more scared of the nun than I was scared of the skeleton. So I probably never walked through there again.
Nice. Yeah, no, you would be more scared of them, all right, for sure. There's a lot of scary nuns.
I think that still holds up as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we're on to stories, yeah? Will we do the stories?
Yeah, we'll get there eventually, yeah.
Tim, do you want to do a spooky story first, or will we do the spooky story first?
Well, I've got 2, but I'll do a short one to start off.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So I've heard you say, and I think it was you guys, that not many Bigfoot in Ireland.
Yep, that was us.
Yeah.
We did say that, Tim. So tell us we're wrong.
Before we used the terms Bigfoot and Sasquatch, of course, back in time, they called them wild men.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't have those descriptions. So this is from the Freeman's Journal, Dublin, Ireland, the 6th of November, 1851.
Nice.
Wow. A wild man of the woods. A very curious rumor is at present prevalent in the southern part of our county, in the southern portion of our county, which has obtained general credence amongst the peasantry. It is alleged that a wild man, wearing no clothes and covered over with hair, infests the plantations in the neighborhood of Ringwood, lurking in the topmost branches of high trees by days, and at night prowling about and carrying off sheep of the farmers, which he devours ravenously in a raw state. We are unable to give further particulars of this most extraordinary report, but some of our correspondents may perhaps be able to throw some light upon the matter by communicating with us. Our informant states that the general belief of the people of this district is that the wild man, as they term him, effected his escape from a menagerie or exhibition of savage animals at Liverpool nearly a year since, but they do not attempt to account for the manner of his crossing the Channel into this country, or where he has been hiding till now. That is, it was printed in the Freeman's Journal in Dublin. It comes from the Kilkenny Moderator.
I was going to say I'm actually at the time of recording this. I'm going to Kilkenny tomorrow, which is kind of funny. So I must check where Ringwood is. I'm staying there for the weekend, so maybe I'll see a wild man. But that's interesting. I always find those really old stories fascinating, and we'll probably work that into an episode because we kind of do an ongoing Sasquatch series where we just, because it's such a broad topic and you kind of have to just pick and choose little bits from it. But yeah, Ringwood, interesting, man. I there's another one in Wicklow or something. I think there's been sightings as well, which is not too far from me and Eamon.
Yeah, there is a Sasquatch sort of group that tried to track him down in Ireland, but yeah, it's no, we don't have a whole lot of sightings or anything. But I will say this: I was in Kilkenny for a stag party a number of months ago, and there was a few wild men on the go that night. It was, that the pubs were open. It was, COVID was over.
Do you know, I seen something recently that I didn't work into our original Bigfoot episode. We'll briefly touch on it, but did you guys see the sketch that Patterson did before he did the Bigfoot film? He did a sketch of the female Bigfoot, and almost it was turned the same way as the female Bigfoot was in his film. And the thing that people say is, well, he was sketching it from a witness account. But I suppose it's another layer to the whole is it real, isn't it real debate, because it adds a layer of fishiness that I at the time, we actually did a pretty good deep dive into the Patterson Gilman, but I didn't know that going into it, and I think that changes my opinion quite heavily. I
have come into some information recently that has made me more skeptical of it, and I'll share it with you off the air.
Yeah, that's kind of I think as the layers of the onion get peeled back, I'm sort of starting to get a little bit, but it's food for thought, Scott. I think it's always important as well, because we have these podcasts where we talk about this type of stuff, that it's important to talk about the pitfalls of some of them too.
Sure. And for me, it does nothing that it does nothing to my belief in Bigfoot, because I've said for forever that there's something about these things that make them nearly impossible to film. So if that film turns out to be a hoax or not what they said it was in some way, then it does nothing as to my opinion of it. It just kind of reinforces what I've been saying. Like, you can't film this stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
We had people send us just video clips where they're trying to film something like, I don't know, a fox on like a motorway that's like, and it's a well-lit motorway. It's not too far away, maybe 100 feet max. And they're on their phone camera, which in modern standards are pretty good quality now. And you can't even really make that out clearly. So, it is fascinating. So